Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to Casual Friday. I am Shawn for W, and I'm joined, as I am every Casual Friday, by my partners in crime. XJ, how are you?
I'm doing great, Shawn. You know, off-season vibes. I'm just vibing out to cap or no caps, enjoying the playoffs, enjoying Jokic demonstrating that he's the best player in the world, like what us analytics nerds have been trying to tell you guys for years. I know Mensa's been on that. I'm enjoying that there's no dominant team in the Eastern Conference, and I don't see anyone forming soon. I'm enjoying that we have a top 20 player in the league for $26 million per year on average. So, I'm just chilling. I'm doing really well.
That's great to hear. And my other partner in crime, live from Brooklyn, Mensa Smith. Mensa, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. The sting of losing the Eastern Conference semifinals wears off every day, and I get to appreciate more and more what this season has been. But I'm not doing as good as that shirt you have on. I'm not sure I understand it with the New York Mag font there. I don't know, for those who are watching. For those who are listening to the audio, Shawn has a shirt on that says the New York Spurs, and I think that needs to be addressed for a second.
Yes. So as Mensa said, I'm wearing a shirt that says the New York Spurs in the style of the New Yorker magazine. And it's because I have decided that I'm going to switch my allegiance to the San Antonio Spurs, and I'm going to start a Spurs supporters club in New York. So that's why I'm wearing this shirt.
So then why this podcast, bro?
The Detroit Pistons hired a new head coach, Monty Williams. And, now that a 17-win team has hired a new head coach, the Knicks there's no hope for the New York Knicks anymore because the Pistons are coming. They're going to catch us down, and they're going to fly right by us because apparently the Knicks have to go crazy and they cannot run it back because the 17-65 Detroit Pistons hired Monty Williams. On Twitter, the alarms are sounded. People are panicking. People are going crazy. What are we going to do? Orlando's coming. Indiana's coming. So you know what? There's no hope.
Are these real takes, Shawn?
Huh?
Are these real takes by real people?
Like not knick-knack, paddywhack, right?
There are so many people on the timeline who are like, we see Detroit got better. The Indiana got better. The Knicks got to stand pat. They can't stand pat. They can't run it back. They better do something or we're stuck. It is insane on the timeline. Let me say this for the record because I understand how the internet works. I am not becoming a San Antonio Spurs fan. I am a Knicks fan for 32 seasons, and I'll be a Knicks fan for another 32 seasons. But I started in jest because the topic of today's show was actually inspired by some things that I saw on the timeline. And listen, as we all know, Twitter is not a real place, but there are real people on it. And sometimes these real people say some real things. So I was on the timeline. I was perusing the Bird app. And I heard a number of takes. I'll share some with you because I wrote them down.
Trigger warning. This was his first mistake.
Yes. Like your first mistake was listening to Stephen A. Smith. My first mistake was taking anything I heard on Twitter seriously. I will save the non-Knicks ones, like, Jimmy isn't a star. I'll move that to the side. I heard that the Knicks should blow it up. I heard that Orlando is in a better position than we are, and we should want their roster over ours. And that even though it took the Orlando Magic 11 years from the point where they traded Dwight Howard to the point where they drafted Paolo Banchero, that 11-year rebuild was worth it. Even though technically that rebuild is still going because they've won the same amount of that nucleus, that core has won the same amount of playoff games as me, you, and me, XJ, and Mensa have, right? And so I was thinking to myself, 3 years ago, if you had told me, and actually shared this to people on the Bird app. I said 3 years ago, if you told me when Leon Rose took over that in 3 years, the Knicks would be 6 wins away from the NBA Finals, I think every one of us would have taken that. I think if you told me in March of 2020 that 3 years from now, this team, which is devoid of talent for the most part, except for some couple young players, would be 6 wins away from the Eastern Conference Championship, I believe that every single Knicks fan would have signed up for that. Do you know what I was told? I was told that I was a casual. And I was like, well, yes, I am a casual because I'm part of Casual Friday. But I was told I was a casual and that Orlando's doing a better job and yada, yada, yada. And I'm sitting there and I'm finding it hilarious that I'm like, because, it's funny. I don't know when Orlando became this model franchise because Orlando and the Knicks have, in my basketball watching life, have won the same amount of things. They've won no championships and they've won the Eastern Conference twice. But apparently,
they have won something. They've won the NBA draft lottery a record 4 times and have done nothing with it.
My brother, this is why we are here. This is why we are here, because they have won the lottery, not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 times, and have, again, no championships and 2 conference championships. But when I got called a casual, I said it actually triggered a thought in my head. I was like, you know something? Maybe this is something I could bring to Casual Friday. And I sat there and I thought about the Knicks rebuild. Some people think it's a rebuild. Some people call it a retool, star chasing, whatever the team building process that this team has chosen. And I said to myself, you know what? Are the Knicks on schedule? Are the Knicks ahead of schedule? Or the Knicks behind schedule? And I think if you ask like 10 different people, you will get like 10 different answers, or maybe, well, not 10 different answers, but you get a mixture of all 3. So before we dive into the meat of today's show, I'll start with Mensa. In your opinion, from the point that Leon Rose took over, which was March of 2020, are in terms of building a legitimate championship contender, are the Knicks ahead of schedule, on schedule, or behind schedule?
I would say they are on schedule. I want to say Leon Rose has been, okay, so it was the OB draft. Okay, so he's been in charge of 3 drafts. So that's about 3 seasons. I think that considering where the roster was in terms of like cap space and movable contracts, that you can flip a roster like that pretty quickly. Look at what Masai Ujiri did with the rudderless Toronto Raptors. Didn't really have any top 5 picks outside of like Jonas Valanciunas. We had 3rd overall pick RJ Barrett already in the building. I would say that the Knicks, and then he turned that team into a perennial contender that eventually won one in 2019. So I would say the Knicks are on schedule. I don't think they're ahead of schedule. I don't think they're behind schedule, which is why I personally believe this is the most pivotal offseason in quite some time for the New York Knicks because of where they are on the schedule.
Actually, what about you?
I mean, I think Mensa makes a great point. I think we're slightly ahead of schedule. The 1920 New York Knicks were 21-45, finished 12th in the Eastern Conference. Their coach was Dave Fizdale. Leon Rose became president 3 years and 4 months ago. And in my opinion, how I look at it is a strong front office can take a team from pretty trash to a title contender in about 6 years. There's a number of ways that they can do that, which, I'm sure we'll talk about a little later. But if they're not on track in 3 years, if hitting indicators that they are on track, then to me, that front office should be out and it's time to restart. We're going into year 4. Things look really good. And to me, Jalen Brunson is largely what makes them ahead of schedule. He was a top 15 offensive player in the league during the regular season. And in the postseason, he demonstrated that he can be potentially a number 1 offensive option on a championship contender. And I'll say it again, like I said in the opening, he makes $26 million per year. In 2025, he'll be 28 years old and actually making less. He'll be making $25 million. And in that same year, let me just drop a few names. Bradley Beal will be 32, making $54 million per year. Trae Young will be making $46 million per year. Jaylen Brown, in my opinion, the most overrated player in the sport. People know I feel this way.
Say it again, XJ. Say it again.
In my opinion, the most overrated player in the sport, Jaylen Brown, will be 28 and probably making upwards of $50 million in that year. And we're talking about Jalen Brunson going to be making $25 million, half of what Jaylen Brown will be making, less than half of what Bradley Beal will be making at age 32. Slight tangent, but I was trying to figure out who the next player is that might confer max value, but won't get near a max contract, like Jalen Brunson. Conferring max value, but not being near max contract. I had trouble finding any other candidates. The only guys I could pick out were like, if Austin Reeves makes a crazy leap after he gets his deal this year, he could be a guy. And then honestly, it's kind of crazy. The other one that I could identify just genuinely is Emmanuel Quickley. I think Quick still has an offensive leap in him. And it's going to make, if he does it, it's going to make the $20 to $25 million that he's going to be making look like an insane bargain. So we're talking about the Knicks could potentially be a team that has two of the most underpaid guys in the entire NBA. To me, the future is brighter right now than it has been at any point since the 90s. I believe we're slightly ahead of schedule. The schedule to me is bad to title contender in 6 years. I believe that literally any point within the next 2 years, there could be one deal, a couple of deals that could take them over that edge. So we have about a 2-year window to become a title contender. And I think we're either aligned with, 2-year window to be ahead of schedule. So if they become a title contender within the next 2 years, to me, that's ahead of schedule. So that's what I'm looking at. I definitely think they're like anywhere from on schedule to slightly ahead.
I think that's fair. I think that anyone who thinks we're behind schedule, I think I would respectfully disagree. Because again, the Knicks were, 3 years ago, the Knicks had their best trade asset was RJ Barrett. No, it was Marcus Morris because that got us Emmanuel Quickley. As opposed to like, when the Sixers started the process that they traded Drew Holiday and they got a gaggle of picks, and we got a pick, we got a late first round pick and a pick swap from a team that was looking to contend for the Western Conference Championship. I think we have these discussions about. Like, are we screwed? Are we in purgatory? Are we this? Are we that? I think we have these discussions because we are, honestly, I think it's the mentality we have as New Yorkers. And by mentality, I mean, we get to a certain point and then we fail or we don't advance. And I know failed is a very touchy word amongst NBA and NBA Twitter right now, by people who want to just, throw feces at Giannis because he said I failed, but it's not that big of a deal, whatever. But like,
well, you say
we got to this point.
Yeah.
We got to this point. Exactly. We get to a certain point and we failed. We didn't advance, whatever word you want to use. But it seems like because we failed, we're screwed, right? And I mean, how do I say this? Like, it just seems like at every single point we reach, when we don't advance, we're screwed. And it's like at the end of the 2020 season when we didn't make the bubble and we were what? I don't remember what our record was. We failed. We're screwed. We make the almighty 4th seed. We failed. We lose to Atlanta. We failed. We're screwed. We win 37 games next year. Oh, now we're really screwed because we didn't even make the playoffs. So it's like, wait, we took a step back. So now it's a failure compared to last year, even though last year was a failure. they make the playoffs again. And again, they get to within 6 wins of the Eastern Conference Championship. And it's, we didn't beat the Heat. We failed. We're screwed. We can't do anything else. And I'm like, so if we had beat the Heat and lost to the Celtics, you just said we were screwed. Because how did we lose to the Celtics? We beat them 3-1, right? And if we beat the Celtics and get to the finals against the Nuggets and lose to the Nuggets, there would have been people that said, like, we failed, we're screwed, we can't beat this team, we're done. It's like the only way we can not the only way we're not screwed is if we're holding the Larry O'Brien trophy in our hand. Now, listen, I want to win a championship just as much as anyone. I'm not saying that we should accept getting to the second round and that's it. But the idea that the Knicks are stuck, the Knicks are screwed, the Knicks cannot advance any further because they lost to the Heat, because they didn't tank for 11 years, because Caleb Martin is shooting 57% from the field in the playoffs, because we have Julius Randle, who apparently is a lemon and nobody wants him, and he's not that good of a basketball player, and he's a bum, even though people double team him all the time. It's like, when do we get to enjoy the journey? Like, you got to enjoy the journey at some point. So that got me thinking, all right, let me look at the journeys of the other teams and see which journey we are most mimicking. For those watching on YouTube, you can see I'm sharing my screen. For those listening on the podcast, I'll explain what's on the screen. So I did the legwork to look at the last 10 champions of each conference and looked at their 3 best players and how they built their team. Now, in terms of best players, sometimes it's really easy. Like, for example, with the Heatles, that's LeBron, Spoelstra, LeBron, Wade, Bosh, that's, whatever. But then for like the 2020 Lakers, it's LeBron, Davis, and Rondo, Danny Green, KCP. And so there's a little bit of subjectivity for like the third one, but you kind of get the point. So there we did. So what I did was I've listed the last, the last 11, because I have the Nuggets and the Heat in here. I have Nuggets on the winning team because I can see the future. And I've listed how they were acquired, whether it's draft, by trade, or free agency. And if they're acquired by draft, what pick they were. So, for example, for the Nuggets, Jokic acquired 41st pick. Aaron Gordon, he was traded for. And Jamal Murray, seventh pick. Now, draft day trades, players who were traded for on draft day. I like, for example, Kawhi. Kawhi counts as a trade because even though he wasn't drafted by the Spurs, he was traded for on draft day. Because my reasoning being, if the Indiana Pacers wanted Kawhi Leonard, they would have just taken Kawhi Leonard, and there's nothing the Spurs could have did about it. Whereas for somebody like Jamal Murray, yes, Jamal Murray was the pick in the Carmelo Anthony trade. That trade happened so far in the past that I'm not gonna call that a trade. That's like, I have this pick. This is what I did. So looking at these teams, what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at each year and see which team building model, if the Knicks are following that model, and if they are following that model, are they on the right track to do so? And if they're not following that model, is that model better or worse than what the Knicks doing right now? And the point of the exercise is just to take a really deep dive and say, like, all right, we know the Knicks. Let's figure out how the Knicks are building their team, and does it make sense? And is it better than what some teams have done? And is it worse than what some teams have done? Because some people, for example, like the tank crowd thinks like the only way to build a team is to be bad, get a top 3 pick, be bad again, get a top 3 pick, be bad, be not as bad, draft someone else, and then you take off. Whereas some other teams, some people feel like, they want to be the Lakers and like just sign free agents and what have you. So do we understand the game? I'll take your silence as a yes. Great. All right.
Yes, we do.
Let's and also for what's in giggles, I calculated the average draft position on another slide for each of the teams. So, for example, the average draft position of the 2016 Cavs is 2.3 because their top three players, LeBron, Kyrie, and Love, are 1, 1, and 5. Whereas the average draft position of the top three players of the 2023 Heat is 34.7 because Jimmy Butler was taken 30th, Bam was taken 13th, and Caleb Martin was taken 61. And 61 is actually not true. But since he was an undrafted free agent, he was actually not drafted. So I literally gave him a number of 61. So let's start from the top. 2023 Nuggets. Jokic, 41st pick. Aaron Gordon, trade from those plucky franchise dynasty and making Orlando Magic with their 17-year rebuild, and Jamal Murray, 7th pick. Are we following this? Are Knicks following this model? Actually, I'll start with you.
The Knicks are not following this model per se. I mean, it's not way off, and what I want to say to kind of establish where my perspective comes from just at the beginning of this game. And thanks for doing all this legwork, Shawn. This is a great spreadsheet. If you're listening to the pod and not watching, if you get a chance, jump on the YouTube so you can, kind of see what Shawn has put together. It's really nice to see from a visual sense. But I think that the Knicks are not done yet with their building, right? And so to me, their championship model is not really described by what they've done so far, by who they have on their roster currently. But I anticipate their championship model to really look like a free agent signing, Jalen Brunson, a free agent signing of a second round pick in Jalen Brunson, a draft of a late first round pick in Emmanuel Quickley, and a trade. So a trade that will inevitably, in my opinion, involve Julius Randle, or maybe even a trade after trading Julius Randle. But inevitably, I think their top three guy will come from a trade rather than what Randle was, which is a free agent signing. So how I'm looking at it is like the Knicks model is more like free agent signing, trade, and a draft pick. So in that regard, it's different because the Nuggets were like a lot more homegrown. Obviously, you can see, but they also just like, I mean, come on, you got the best player in the league, potentially a top 20 player of all time, in my opinion, likely to be a higher than that at the 41st overall pick. Nobody can build a champion. Like you can't reliably build a championship contender that way. So I wouldn't say the Knicks are following that model.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like every team needs a little bit of luck. Every team, like the draft is a crapshoot. Like the Nuggets is literally, you rolled on a come out roll on craps. You rolled 7, like 9 times in a row. So then I'll say this. So then I'll go to Mensa. So let's look at the team that they're playing, the Miami Heat. Their 3 best players: Jimmy, free agent; Bam, 13th pick; and then an undrafted free agent and Caleb Martin. Does the Knicks model, and to actually's point, clearly they're not a championship contender yet, so they're still going. But do you see the Knicks model following what the Heat are doing? Do you think it's following that model, or is it something different?
No, I do not expect the New York Knicks to sign a superstar psychopath in free agency and pair a superstar psychopath with the best coach in basketball. I think just like the Denver Nuggets, I think what the Miami Heat have done this year, especially as an 8th seed, is unique, and we will not see that model repeated again. I would say that as far as I differ a little bit from XJ in that I'm a bit more cynical about how the Knicks will eventually get to a championship roster. I do not think that the New York Knicks would have drafted one of their 3 best players on a championship roster today, because I think the New York Knicks are looking to trade their draft picks for not 1, but 2 star players. So I think it's going to be Brunson, a guy, and the guy before. So I think it's more free agency trade for the Knicks. So I don't I don't see us having a Bam kind of guy or a Jamal Murray kind of guy being one of our 3 best players on a championship team. So I would say no, the New York Knicks are not building like the Miami Heat.
So then let's do this then. So I think we all can agree that this iteration of the New York Knicks under this regime, when they win the championship, knock on wood, their 3 best players are not going to be drafted by the team. I think that's fair, right?
I mean, I think Mensa's right, and you're right, Shawn. Most likely not. I'm not giving up faith that Quickly can make an insane leap offensively and become as good offensively as he is defensively, in which case, I know it's a hot take. I can see a Brunson and Quickly backcourt being the backcourt of a championship contender.
There's nothing hot about that take at all, in my opinion. From what I've seen from Emmanuel Quickly, no, not at all. This is a guy who right now is 78th in the 78th percentile for offensive EPM and 93rd defensively. He's not even. Is he 25? Like he's 24 this year. There's nothing hot about that take at all. That kid is excellent. But I don't want to go off the rails on Emmanuel Quickly, but I will believe it after this offseason. I don't think anybody's safe except for Jalen Brunson. So we'll see. That's where I'll leave it.
So for the Knicks because it's not impossible, as I think about it now, for the draft path to be the path of the championship contender, but that would involve their 3 best players being a combination of RJ Barrett, Obi Toppin, Emmanuel Quickly, Quentin Grimes, Jericho Sims. I'm probably someone I'm forgetting.
Mitchell Robinson
off the top of my head.
Deuce McBride. Can't forget Deuce.
Because even if we go with the Jalen Brunson IQ backcourt, Jalen Brunson obviously wasn't drafted, but that means you'd have it will be Jalen Brunson, Emmanuel Quickly, RJ Barrett, Obi Toppin, and then insert center here. Miles Turner, hello. That's a kid. I'm just kidding. I'm not just kidding. But like I thank you, Mensa, for reminding me not to hit the table. I think it's safe to say do we think that's possible?
I mean, not that specific construction that you mentioned, Shawn. I don't think that's necessarily possible, but I think it's possible that, let's say, Randall is moved in addition to, let's say Quentin Grimes, a bunch of picks like for the guy, and then you have a Brunson Quickly and then a true 1A superstar attached to those guys. And that's a championship contender. So I think that's a possibility where you have the scenario where like the Knicks top 3 guys, one is from free agency, one is from a trade, and one is from a draft. I think that's unlikely. Like I said, I agree with Mensa. I think it's like not likely. It's more likely that Quick is outgoing in one of those deals for a superstar. But, I just wanted to note that I think it's possible, and I would love to see it, but we'll see.
So then let me ask you guys this. Let's say next year, everything just goes belly up and, there's God forbid, but there's injuries. There's, Randall reverts back to 2020 Randall, whatever. And
he goes down the down end of the seesaw again.
Yes, it's odd. It's so odd year Julius.
Odd year
Julius.
Oh my goodness.
So then let's say that happens, and the chairman of the Madison Square Garden Corporation says, "You know what? I've had enough. Tom, Leon, Wes, thanks for the memories. It's time to say goodbye." And he cleans house. And we bring in Bob Myers, who's like, all right, I had a year off, right? Would you want to see? How would you feel about if the model was, all right, we're not going to go necessarily full process, but we're going to build through the draft? How would you feel about that approach? I'll start with you, Mensa, and then we'll go to XJ. Even though I think I know where XJ is going, but we'll start with Mensa.
If everything goes belly up, I will believe it is the coach's fault and that we should have put the ball in our. I'm lying.
Fire stuff, Mensa.
If everything goes belly up, though, I would be a little disappointed because I believe in the guys we drafted already, and I will never not believe in Jalen Brunson. So to kind of scrap, to like. I think there would be opportunity to rebuild to retool and not rebuild. So I would be disappointed if they said, screw all this, we're going full draft, full tank. And I have to to be honest, man, not that I'm tired of rebuilding, but I would at least like to see where this goes. So yeah, I'd be a little disappointed if we scrapped everything and started over with the draft.
XJ.
Yeah, I mean, if all things were equal, right? Like if we weren't where we are at right now, would I be okay with that approach? Yeah, of course. Like I totally condone the approach where you tank for a few years, you get high draft picks, you hoard assets, you trade whatever valuable players you have for more assets, and then you kind of hope that of the 10, 11, 12, reasonably high value young assets you have, one, two, three of those players hit, and then you kind of build from there. So I condone that approach. Would I want it in this scenario? Probably not. Probably not. I think we're too far gone. I know definitely there's such thing as a sunk cost fallacy, but I do think we're too far down this kind of a rabbit hole this way. And we have Jalen Brunson, we have Emmanuel Quickley. Even if Julius reverted to odd year Julius, I just don't see a way to diverge and building through the draft. And to be honest, I don't even know that I would trust, am I trusting Bob Myers with the draft? Has he done an amazing job in the draft? It's really hard to say. I mean, in those, championship teams that you're talking about, I mean, yeah, they had 2 draft picks, but who wouldn't have picked Curry where Curry fell to them? That's a lot of luck more than it is amazing talent evaluation, in my opinion. So, I don't know if I would really condone it at this point with the players that we have. I think we're too far down this path to kind of go in a completely different direction. And if those guys were all fired, I would be bring in guys who are going to just take us further down this path, but just do a better job at it.
Oh, Mensa brought up an interesting point about not being tired of rebuilding, right? Because again, and I will throw a bone to those people who are, saying we're screwed, purgatory, whatever. Because again, we won the Eastern Conference in 1999. We played for the Eastern Conference Championship in 2000. And since then, it's been squadouche. And especially for someone who is my age, who's been following the team for 32 years, it would suck if it would be all right, wow, we got to start all over again, right? That would absolutely suck. So to your point, Les, I guess there is some validity in being tired of rebuilding. But at the same time, I think that, again, the chairman of Madison Square Garden Company, I think he's tired of rebuilding too. And he went to Leon Rose or said, fix this. But listen, we can't do it. We can't pull a Philly. We can't be OKC. We can't do that. We need to can we turn this around in a relatively timely fashion, so to speak. And obviously Leon took that job on. So I think it's safe to say that we can eliminate the models of the teams where they drafted the 3 best players, which is all the Warriors teams and the 2022 and the 2022 Celtics.
Can you clarify the Warriors thing to me, Shawn, with the Durant?
That's true. Durant. Oh, you're right. Durant doesn't count. Okay. Actually, no. We're going to exclude the 2017 and 18 Warriors because there will not be a cap spike where the second best player in the world is available for us to sign because our best player was signed to a sub-market contract because he had bad ankles. And
well, our best player is signed to a sub-market contract, but yeah, point taken. I think you're right.
So all we need. So you know what? All we need when not the new CBA, when the new TV deal goes into effect is somebody look up when Jokic is a free agent and see if it's that year and say, here is $92 million a year.
Right? Jokic and Brunson.
Bro, give me the whatever. I'm not even gonna put that out there. All right. So the draft is out. So basically now there's either some combination of either you draft one guy and you acquire the other two, or you draft two guys and you acquire the other one, right? So I guess this now goes to team building. And in fact, let's have a little fun. It is 2024. It is it's game one of the first round of the 2024 playoffs. I named all the guys that we drafted. How many of those guys are still on this team? How many guys in the rotation are still on this team? Or even better, are any one of those guys we drafted one of the core three? Anyone. So again, that's RJ, that's Quickly, that's Grimes, that's Obi, that's Mitch, that's Deuce, and Jericho Sims. Are any one of those three are in our top three? And actually, I'll start with you this time.
I mean, yeah, I think Quickly's going to be here. I don't see Quickly getting moved. I think Quickly's going to get re-signed extended this offseason. I'm also hopeful that happens. To be honest, like as a Knicks fan and hopeful, like I want Quickly not to bet on himself because I think if Quickly bets on himself and doesn't sign an extension, he could be looking at max money after an insane year next year. So hopefully he takes the deal a la Julius Randle and locks in the extension as opposed to like saying like, well, you know, I could wait till my contract comes up and then make some real money. So yeah, I think Quickly's going to be there and is going to be the third best player on our team in the beginning of the playoffs in 2024.
Mensa?
A little more pessimistic. I think that the only player next year that will be on this team, and I really do hope I'm wrong, but the way this front office looks at basketball players to me is discouraging. But again, another topic for another day. I think the only one who will be here is Mitchell Robinson. I think that Emmanuel Quickly and RJ Barrett are likely to be dealt this summer. And I think the player that comes in will likely be pushing Quentin Grimes into a position that he can't handle, because if you look at all these guys who are likely to come in, they are not good defenders except for one, and he's probably not coming, and that one is OG Anunoby. So I think that we're going to try something. We're going to see, hey, we might need a bigger defender, and then flip Quentin Grimes for said bigger defender. So it will probably look like Brunson, player X, player Y that was acquired via midseason trade, Julius Randle, and Mitchell Robinson will be our starting five in the playoffs next year. I'm very pessimistic at that.
That's a big shakeup. I just want to say, Mensa, that's a big shake. You're anticipating a lot of things happening.
I'm just so pessimistic about it. I don't think that, like, the way we look at Emmanuel Quickly and the way, especially with the CBA coming, I just think that these guys, like, they want better players, you know, like I don't think that the front office is necessarily focused on fit, because if they were focused on fit, two guys who've been in the starting five for the past 4 years would not still be here. One of the two would have been gone. It's more about appreciating assets and then flipping said assets. And I think that they realize that, especially with, and this is just pure speculation, but especially with Bob Myers not having a job, like Leon Rose, the rent might be due soon, you know? So if the season goes any way but right, those rumors are going to come back around. You're going to have people on television who scream for a living, screaming, "Get us Bob Myers," and it'll get nasty. So what I hope happens is I hope they look at this roster and say, we had enough this year. Things went wrong because of inexperience. and let's just keep it together. Let's make a couple marginal moves, maybe move one core piece for an upgrade, but keep the guys together for better or for worse. I want to keep this roster together. Like 85% of it should still be here come next playoffs, but I don't run the New York Knicks, and I believe the people who do run the New York Knicks aren't necessarily attached to anybody on this roster except for Jalen Brunson. That's the one that they double and triple down on. Everybody else is kind of an asset, and there's going to be a lot of movement happening this offseason, and I think the Knicks are going to be moving some players.
So, wow. Okay. So that means in this scenario of 2024, hold on one second. In 2024, there's possible that there's in our top three, there's going to be no homegrown players. And so
I think so. Yeah, I do think so. Right now, our top three has two players who are not homegrown. It's really just take a pick, whatever night it is, Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, or Mitchell Robinson, one of the so yeah, it really one trade away from our top three guys being all trades or free agent signings.
Okay, so, and I'm going to describe what I'm doing for those who are not watching on YouTube. Basically, your model, Mensa, is the 2020 Lakers, because I look at the last 11 NBA conference champions, and the only one that has no homegrown players are the 2020 Lakers. Like, because even the Heat with their average draft position of 34.7, they drafted Bam Adebayo. So you think that that is the path that they're following? Most likely that they're following is the 2020 Lakers.
I would have to agree with that. And I think it makes sense for a team like New York to want to copy what the Lakers did, because we're a big market team with big market pockets and can afford to pay players big dollars.
And when I look at, and then for XJ, because I think XJ said he thinks that Emmanuel Quickley be the third guy, that looks more like you could say the 2019 Raptors of Siakam, but then again, actually, because we agree Brunson's going nowhere unless something catastrophic happens. So he's a free agent signing, and that means we have and then if we have Quickley, who's drafted, which means the third piece can be either a trade or free agent signing. So that XJ, I would say to you, what do you think is more likely for the third guy, a trade or a free agent? And we can go through the list of the free agents that, we know when, like, for example, Devin Booker is going to be up in 4 years and what have you. But, like, do you think it'll be a second guy? How do you think we'll get the third guy?
Yeah, it's a great question. I feel very strongly it's going to be via trade. I don't imagine a situation where we're going to wait long enough for those guys who need to come up via free agency that we can just sign them outright. Like, I don't imagine that happening, because that's coming down the line. We'd have to wait several years, and the Knicks are not waiting several years for that. Like, it's going to be in the next 2 years where they make a big splash move, and the only way to get those guys is going to be via a trade. Like you said, we can look at the free agents who are coming up, but it's not going to be the guys who are coming up for supermax extensions, and those guys are not going anywhere via free agency. So yeah, I feel very strongly it's probably going to be via trade. So I do think it's more similar to the 2019 Raptors, even though they have one, the Knicks would have signed Brunson via free agency. It's kind of like semantics, because what really should have happened for Dallas is it should have been a sign and trade. Dallas should have signed and traded him. But trade and a late first round pick. I think it'll be something more similar to that, free agency, trade, late first round pick. And but I also agree with Mensa and with some of what you said, Shawn. Like, I don't think this front office is like wedded to like, oh, we need a homegrown. I don't think they care about any of that homegrown talent stuff. They're just trying to get the most value that they can. And Mensa, you said it really well. Like, appreciate players' values and then flip them for what to maximize on what their values might be. So I could easily see it being the kind of 2020 Lakers model, but I'm thinking and kind of hoping it'll be more similar to the Raptors model, because I think the Knicks have some really good homegrown guys that can fill that role. And I think we would, as Knicks fans, like I'm sure we don't really care that much. Like we want to see a championship, but it would be nice to see. It'd be cool to see.
So I'm going to listen, this is my game. This is my idea. So I'm going to be a little funny business, right? So for those who aren't watching, I've highlighted the models that XJ and Mensa have highlighted. So the 2020, Mensa believes will be is more along the lines of the 2020 Lakers, which is two free agents and a free agent in LeBron, a trade for Anthony Davis, and then honestly, the third guy. Listen, I mean, none of them are homegrown, like except for unless it's Kyle Kuzma, right? Because obviously it's Rondo. He was a free agent. Well, Caruso's homegrown. Danny Green isn't homegrown. KCP wasn't homegrown, right? So there's that. Now for the 2019 Raptors, I had as their top three players Kawhi, Kyle Lowry, and Pascal Siakam. Obviously, everyone knows Kawhi was a trade. Lowry was a trade. Siakam they drafted. You can, if you flip Siakam or if you say Lowry, because Lowry wasn't really good until Game 6. But if you take out Lowry, for example, so it's interesting because even though Lowry because Lowry, I think the Raptors were his third team. Lowry was seen as like one of the guys, like one of the guys that was there for a long time. And then but you flip him out for like a Fred VanVleet, who was undrafted, but obviously was homegrown because they got him. Then that's where the semantic works for you. But the funny thing is, the only other team on this list where the top three guys one was a free agent, one was drafted, and one was traded for are the 2020 Miami Heat, which I have Jimmy, I have Bam, and I have, sorry, Tyler Hero fans, I have Goran Dragic, who was traded for. So basically, the Knicks are basically following the model of the teams that made the final in the bubble. So that's the model. And then for me personally, to answer my own question, I think we're all in agreement that this front office could give a you-know-what about. There's no sentimentality about homegrown guys. They're trying to win, and if they find an opportunity, if they see an upgrade, they'll make the upgrade. Because we all know, if it wasn't for Leon Rose waking up and saying, you know what, I'm not going to give Utah a third unprotected pick, RJ Barrett would have been in Utah this season. So I personally think I lean more towards XJ's line of thinking of that being the model, but I can clearly see, I can see, I'm not going to say any names because I don't want to get in trouble, but I can see 2-3 years from now, the Knicks are in the finals and none of those guys were drafted. And honestly, and I think this is a good way to close, unless anyone has anything else to say, I don't think it matters. And the reason I say I don't think it matters is because, again, I'm looking at I'm looking at the last 11 conference champions the last 11 conference champions. They're all mixes. Some are free agents. Some are it's all a mix. Some are free agents. Some are drafted. Some like the Heatles. They literally signed 3 guys and won the championship. The Celtics drafted 3 guys and played for the championship. The Nuggets drafted 2 guys and traded for a guy who was the 4th overall pick and did it. There is no quote unquote right or wrong way to build a team. If, as someone who believes in process over results, team building more than anything else is a results-based business, because you can fall ass backwards into a 2-time MVP who was drafted during a Taco Bell commercial in Nikola Jokic, or you can get lucky and win the lottery 4 times and win the championship. Oh, wait a minute. The Magic didn't actually never won the championship. So my bad. But you get the point. So Mensa and XJ, I'm glad we went through this exercise. I feel better about where the Knicks are going. I don't think the Knicks are stuck. I don't think the Knicks are doomed. I don't think the Knicks are screwed. I think the Knicks do have a lot of flexibility. And I think it is fair to say that the Knicks are at the very least on schedule, that they're moving in the right direction. And the idea that the Knicks are screwed because they did not follow a particular way to build a team is rubbish. Final thoughts from either of you.
Yeah. Really quickly, I just want to say that when it comes to the NBA, like, success is not stumbled upon randomly at the highest level of anything. An NBA championship is basketball success at the highest level. Every team, whether or not they went the Warriors route and they drafted, Draymond Green and Klay Thompson and even Harrison Barnes and all these guys that they drafted at the time. Steph, of course. You had to find money somewhere, right? The Warriors dynasty found money with the Steph Curry contract. The Miami Heat, when they were winning championships, they found money by drafting the literal third greatest shooting guard of all time, 5th overall. I don't care what draft you are in, you are not guaranteed to get a first ballot Hall of Famer. That is found money. The Toronto Raptors found money. Pascal Siakam, 27th overall. The Los Angeles Lakers found money. Dwight Howard got his groove back suddenly. Rajon Rondo, who was hated by half the league at a bare minimum, found money, right? The New York Knicks are in a position where you can pick who the found money is. Jalen Brunson has found money. Quentin Grimes, 25th overall, found money. Mitchell Robinson found money. Even Julius Randle, you signed a guy that nobody wanted, and he went and won. He went in what? 2 All-Star appearances, 2 All-NBA appearances, found money. The New York Knicks roster you have found money literally everywhere because nobody's giving it out. So no matter what the New York Knicks do, you can believe in this front office. Even if you're like me and you disagree with the way they build the team, I think cohesion is more important than asset appreciation. No matter where you stand on it, you have to look at this roster and say, these guys are good at finding guys where other people look and say, that's not a guy. So they will continue to operate that way. And we are on schedule because, like the late Jerry Krause said, organizations win championships. I don't care if Michael Jordan hated that. It's the absolute truth. Organizations win championships, and the Knicks are in place to finally get back, not even just to respectability because we are, but get back into title contention and hopefully one day use this big market bias and win a championship with it.
Yeah, that's super well said, Mensa, and I agree with all of that. I think to add, what I have to add to all of this is really that how critical timing is to all of this. Like currently right now, there's no powerhouse in the East. And to be honest, there's not one coming. I don't see one coming. I see teams getting worse. I see teams getting a little better, bad teams getting a little better, great teams getting a little worse. I don't think there's a powerhouse coming. And the Miami Heat being in the finals right now is the best news for the Knicks, regardless of how they're building their team. The fact that a team like the Heat, you showed, Shawn, how they assembled that squad. That team is in the finals right now. That means that there is absolutely an opportunity for the Knicks to become the team in the finals, to get to the top of the East. Maybe not during the regular season, but to be a top 3 team, to move into that tier where they're competing and contending for a championship and contending to get to the finals, over a long span of time. So I think regardless of how they build the team, the point for me is that There's no powerhouse. There's no LeBron peak prime LeBron James in the East, where it's like it doesn't really matter what you do, you're not getting past him. There's no peak and prime Giannis with a super stacked squad behind him that's going to be just, a force field where you can't get past it. I think there's going to be opportunity, and so I think they're going to build. They're going to build how they're going to build it. Whether it's no draft picks on the squad, or whether it's for all free agents, or whether it's all guys that are acquired through trade, to me, it's not as relevant as the fact that this is a time of opportunity. They need to strike over the next 2 years while the iron is hot, and timing is just really critical. So however they build it, I love the fact that there's no powerhouse in our conference, and that it leaves us plenty of opportunity moving forward.
All right. And before we get out of here, two things. One, I made a mistake. The Heat did not sign 3 guys. They drafted Dwayne Wade, so he wasn't signed. And 2, I forgot that technically the 2021 Bucks kind of fall into the XJ model, because they drafted Giannis, but they traded for Drew Holiday and traded for Chris Middleton. So just want to get that out the way. But yeah, listen. The Knicks are in a great position. Don't let anyone tell you different. And just remember that when you're fretting all summer about, the Knicks are screwed because the 15 and 67 Pistons hired Monty Williams, their head coach. That's our show for today. I'd like to thank XJ. I'd like to thank Mensa for joining me. We're here each and every Friday to talk casually. Make sure you check. Listen, obviously this is going to be the summertime. Things are going to be a little bit slower, but there will be weekly live streams. We had Benji on Wednesday. We had John the week before. We'll be doing that. Obviously, the draft coverage will continue with Chris Persianen. And listen, we'll be here. And listen, we are going to fill Fridays with some fun stuff, but not going to be the crazy fun stuff, the board fun stuff, like what if the Knicks had kept Pat Riley, but some really interesting stuff, right? So for XJ, for Mensa, I'm Shawn for W. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Knicks Nation, let's ride.